Tennessee when Matthews was doing his college tour, and he was questioned by a college student in the audience.
As we just demonstrated, our military needs as many fine young men and women as it can get. Yes. So why do we still have a policy that discriminates on the basis of declared sexual orientation?
Sit over there. We have to have the most effective and professional military that we can possibly obtain. I listen to people like General Colin Powell, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and literally every military leader that I know, and they testified before Congress that they felt that the don't ask, don't tell policy was the most appropriate way to conduct ourselves in the military, a policy that has been effective. It has worked. Our all-volunteer force, and this is another argument against the draft, is the finest military we have ever had in our history. We have the most qualified, the bravest, and the most capable military we've ever had in our history. And so I think that the policy is working, and I understand the opposition to it, and I've had these debates and discussions. But the day that the leadership of the military comes to me and says, Senator, we ought to change the policy, then I think we ought to consider seriously changing it, because those leaders in the military are the ones we give the responsibility to.
Yes, that was the same senator, Senator John McCain, in 2006, saying if the military leadership recommends this, then he would support this. And yet yesterday, defiantly opposed to the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I want to get the reaction of both Nathaniel Frank, author of Unfriendly Fire, How the Gay Ban Undermines the Military and Weakens America, and Alexander Nicholson, former U.S. Army Human Intelligence Collector, who ended up founding Servicemembers United after he was thrown out of the military for being exposed as gay. This is Democracy Now! Stay with us. Paddington Bear here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 800 stations, on Pacifica and NPR stations, low-power FM, college and community radio stations, on public access TV and PBS TV stations, and both TV satellite networks, on Dish Network Channel 9415 Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, and on DirecTV Channel 375. And we're video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. Our headlines are also available in Spanish for any radio station to take, as over 250 are. I'm Amy Goodman. As we look at this really remarkable day in U.S. history, the day that the military leaders said they no longer support a ban on gay men and lesbians in the military. They don't support the don't ask, don't tell policy that was put into place under President Clinton. Our guests are Nathaniel Frank, Unfriendly Fire, How the Gay Ban Undermines the Military and Weakens America, and Alexander Nicholson, with us in Washington, former U.S. Army Human Intelligence Collector, founder and executive director of Servicemembers United. Alexander Nicholson, you heard John McCain yesterday, and then you just heard him in 2006. What is your response in 2006 saying he would support whatever the military leaders felt was an adequate policy for gay men and lesbians, and now defiantly opposed to the repeal that the military leaders support?
I thought it was very fair of McCain all along to want to listen to the senior military leadership and to get their input. I think that's very reasonable. I was there at the hearing yesterday when McCain said that. I was sitting in the front row, in fact. And, you know, it just sort of drove home the point that Senator McCain is just so out of touch, I believe, with the modern military. You know, to say something like, don't ask, don't tell works and is successful, it is just so beyond the reality that don't ask, don't tell is on the ground. And to say something like, I mean, this was a new one, to say that don't ask, don't tell was well understood throughout the military. I mean, many people in the audience just sort of laughed when he said that, because it just went to show that he was just so out of touch with don't ask, don't tell. You know, because you have a state of arbitrary and capricious enforcement of the law within the military. You have everything from people being witch hunted and outed in very deplorable ways to the law being completely ignored. You have understandings that fall everywhere on the spectrum, from you can discharge someone based on rumor and suspicion to you have to have someone basically committing a homosexual act in front of you to actually have credible evidence to discharge them. So to say something like don't ask, don't tell is well understood throughout the military just goes to show that Senator McCain is so out of touch with the modern military and just does not have an understanding these days of what the don't ask, don't tell policy really has become on the ground. And
interestingly, it sounds like maybe out of touch with his wife, Cindy McCain, who, well, I don't know about her position here, but has just come out with an amazing ad supporting gay marriage in California. Nathaniel Frank, your response. He's the ranking Republican leader in the Senate Armed Services Committee.
Well, I think Alex is exactly right, and he put it well in terms of Senator McCain being detached from the reality on the ground. It's hard to know where to begin with him. I think he was visibly angry yesterday, but his inconsistencies are difficult to understand. You know, you wonder if it's personal. Historically, he's not been known as being, you know, the most anti-gay Republican lawmaker. We know he has a high-level gay staff. And yet this seems very personal to him. Of course, he's facing, you know, a difficult political landscape. And so it's not clear to me if this is a personal or a political decision, but it's certainly irrational. And to say that this works, I mean, 2/3 of service members already know or suspect gays in their units, and the other third are kidding themselves if they really think that they've never shared quarters with a gay person. So the policy has failed at its most basic goal, which was to shield service members of knowledge of gay people, and not to mention all of the costs in terms of talent, money, and morale for gay people. So it's a complete failure. It's hard for him to say otherwise.
Yesterday, Alexander Nicholson, when I was watching one of the networks having a discussion about this, the anchor said, well, what about separate barracks? If you're going to have this policy, don't you need to separate the gay men and lesbians from the other soldiers? The idea of close quarters, your response to that?
You know, I would honestly say that I believe that, too, sort of reflects a lack of knowledge of the reality on the ground with respect to gays in the military. You know, it's a well-established fact that there are already tens of thousands of gays and lesbians within the military. They're already, you know, living with other soldiers. They're already showering with other soldiers. They're already, I mean, fighting and dying alongside other soldiers. Many of them, in fact, you know, thousands we know from personal experience and obviously from working within the Don't Ask, Don't Tell Repeal movement now, thousands of them are already openly gay, are already out within their units with the knowledge of their commands in many cases, and it's not a problem. So, you know, we already have a test of this sort of, you know, hypothesis that there's going to be a negative impact in unit cohesion, morale, and combat readiness going on within the military right now, and it just goes to show and prove that things like that really wouldn't be necessary. And, you know, I wanted to say, too, that, you know, you brought up Cindy McCain. I've actually spoken to their daughter, Meghan McCain, before about this issue, and of course, you know, Meghan McCain has been, you know, out there on a number of progressive causes and supporting gay marriage, and she obviously supports gays in the military. But the interesting thing too is that she told me that her two brothers, John McCain's two sons, who are both in the military, are completely supportive of repeal. And so I think John McCain is not only out of touch with modern society and the modern military, but he's evidently out of touch with the opinions of his two sons who are on the ground in the military right now.
And his daughter and his wife. Nathaniel Frank, go back in history. Explain the history of the policies towards gay men and lesbians in the military.
Well, a version of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was the service-wide ban on homosexual conduct, as they call it, dates from the Carter era. It was a Carter policy that was implemented at the very end of his, or it was formulated at the end of his administration, and so it was implemented right at the beginning of